Welcome to the Science Her Way, the podcast where we all explore health sciences and beyond with leading experts and students. I'm Kelly Pritchett, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Dr. Robert Pritchett and Dr. Anna Frary. Today, unlocking the doors to undergraduate research and covering how students can get involved. Let's set the stage for our listeners. What exactly is undergraduate research, and why is it important? Anna, do you want to give us a quick overview?
Sure, absolutely. Undergraduate research involves students working on scholarly projects, often under the guidance of a faculty mentor. It could be lab-based experiments, field studies, literature reviews, and other types of research. The goal here is to foster discovery, critical thinking, and even collaboration and networking. Undergraduate research is an incredible way to gain hands-on experience, build network, and develop valuable skills, right, Robert?
Yeah, I suppose so. And the big question is, how do you get started? How do we explore the topics that we might be interested in? But luckily, today, we have both Rhodes and Rachel here that are two outstanding undergraduate students within our Department of Health Sciences. And they've made kind of a mark on their research journey. So we'd like to welcome you to our show and then get to know a little bit about your backgrounds and how you got catapulted into this research journey.
It's an accurate descriptor.
What, catapult?
Yeah.
So Rhodes, what was your first experience with undergraduate research, and what drew you into this world?
Yeah, so I had been wanting to get involved in undergraduate research for a while and had kind of been trying to put feelers out for different things, but nothing was really quite sticking, and then a bunch of things stuck all at the same time. So I did some research with both Rachel and Robert Pritchett, Dr. Robert Pritchett.
Have to specify.
Yeah, Mr. Dr. Pritchett, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Or number one.
Hey, that's up for debate.
Oh, really?
But and then also with Dr. Sarah Oppelt over in the biology department, and that happened about the same time around spring quarter last year. As far as how I got involved in those research projects with Dr. Robert Pritchett, I accidentally was included on an email, which I'm very happy about. And so then I started showing up to data collection and worked with data analysis, and Rachel and I got to present the project last year at Source, and we ended up getting an award for it, which is super exciting. But with Dr. Oppelt, my main way of getting into that research was I had her in as a professor for one of my classes last year, and I just kept showing up to her office hours every week until she remembered who I was, and then I started asking about research opportunities every time I was in office hours until she got the hint and then asked me to be in her research lab because she had talked about a lot of her active research during class. And so that was very exciting to be able to join her lab, and I'm currently working with her and Dr. Dickinson on a research project looking at fuel utilization and liver composition. The fuel utilization is during moderate intensity exercise. So that's been a really exciting project. And then this year I have been working with Dr. Frary on some different presentations. I presented at the NCUR conference this month, and we'll present that same data at Source. And so it's all just been a very exciting experience for me.
Yeah. So before we hear from Rachel, could you give us first, Rhodes, a little bit of your background? What is your major, so our listeners can get to know you a little bit?
That would be a little bit helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my major is clinical physiology, and then I have minors in strength and conditioning, nutrition, and biology.
Oh boy, she does it all.
Yeah, Dr. Dickinson likes to joke that I've taken every class available at Central, or at least I'm trying to. Gosh. Yeah, and then this next fall, I'm starting the Integrative Human Physiology Master's Program with a graduate assistantship, and I'm very excited for that, to get even more into research and setting up for my research future.
Cool.
So
Rachel.
Rhodes, that's a lot of minors. Where would you say your passion really is in terms of
Oh gosh, that's a big
study?
question. So I'm interested in just about everything, but a big thing that I really like to focus on is how different specialties can collaborate. So, I'm in Dr. Oppelt's research lab is technically a cell biology research lab. So her other research students are looking at fructose metabolism in cells or in fixed tissue that they get from from Boston University in mice, not in humans. But so I've had that exposure to cellular research as well as more applied physiological research. And I like to find kind of where that in between is ideally what I would like to see in my future. As far as a specific specialty that I would like to go into, I'm very interested in metabolism, in neuromuscular disorders, and genetics, all of those types of things. So it's a wide range of things I could potentially be getting into, but we'll see what the future holds for me.
Awesome.
How about you, Rachel? You want to share a little bit with us about your background and how you got your introduction into undergraduate research?
Sure. So the first year I was here at Central, I was in the Gen Physiology in the Health Science Department, and I was in Dr. Kelly Pritchett's lab class, and I remember her talking about some research stuff, and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, because I remember hearing about, like, other people in my life talking about, like, oh, when you're in undergraduate, you gotta get involved with research, because that's how you get into a graduate school and all these cool things. You put it on your resume, it looks great. I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do that, whatever. So she starts talking about research. I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably something I should go do. I'll go do it. I'll go chat with her. She's like, oh, yeah, my husband, Dr. Robert Pritchett's doing some awesome stuff. I'll put you in contact with him. And so we got in contact, and he was working with another master's student that was collecting some exercise research or exercise data. And it was a super random, I think it was like a Saturday morning or something.
I still remember you walking across a parking lot in a cold spring Saturday morning, cold, and
giant
thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah. But it was super great. They were all super friendly. The master's student brought us all Starbucks, and we were just hanging out, chatting, while some poor guy was running laps around an airfield, and we were taking RPE and all those heart rate things, and the poor guy was... Right. I mean, he was a great athlete, don't get me wrong. But anyway, from that experience, I had a really great time. Started working with Dr. Robert Pritchett more and just got more involved with the department, got more experience collecting data. And from that, later on, got to do more like presentation type things. We went to ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine conferences. Rose and I just went to NCUR, like she was talking about. All sorts of fun stuff, getting involved in all these different things. So that's a very roundabout way to tell my story of undergraduate research at Central.
Well, thanks, Rhodes and Rachel, for that insight on how you got started. I really think it is taking some initiative and reaching out and maybe being persistent like you were, Rhodes, with Dr. Appelt. and you know, that's good. And you got to kind of have an idea of where you want to go in order to know what you have to do today to get there. So obviously you've done that very, very well. So let's talk about maybe some of the benefits that you have seen or experienced by getting involved in undergraduate research, and how has it prepared you for the next step in your career? Road you staying here at Central and going to our Integrative Human Physiology Masters program, and Rachel, you are going off to University of Montana.
Yep.
And so two very exciting next steps. So how has these experiences helped you get to where you want to be?
Yeah, so for me, I actually originally came to Central for nutrition and then flopped around my major a couple of times trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And so research has been a really great learning opportunity just for kind of figuring out the path that I wanted to take and what things specifically I'm interested in, as well as opening up an entire field of a career that I didn't even think of as a possibility. Because, you know, originally I wanted to be a dietitian, and then I switched to physical therapy or physician's assistants, and trying to figure out what exactly I thought would stick with me was really difficult, and it was a lot of turmoil for me. And it wasn't until I was talking to a couple professors, and they pretty much all said, you would be bored in any of those careers, you should do research, that I was like, okay, maybe I should do research. And so, especially being in a cell biology lab, I went in there, and even to this day, I've been in that lab for a year, and they say things, and I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And so I've been put in situations where I'm uncomfortable, and I am out of my depth, and I don't know what's going on, and I don't know how to proceed, but one thing it's taught me is how to pretend that I know what I'm doing, which is a very important skill. But also it has taught me to figure out what I'm doing fairly quickly, and to not be afraid to ask questions, and to use those questions to not only, figure out what we've already done, but also what the next steps should be, and, figuring out your next hypotheses and where you can take your research next and things like that.
Yeah, I love that. Fake it till you make it.
For sure,
I feel like I still do that sometimes.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
we all do, right?
We all do, yeah. But I think that's such a beauty of research, giving you that skill that you can carry anywhere you go. That it's like, I don't know this, but I will figure it out. I will go and I will find it there. The answer is there. It's out there somewhere.
It's very exciting.
The truth is out there. X-Files.
We will find
knowledge. But yeah, it's interesting to hear about your different paths. But it sounds like you guys mentioned a lot about building relationships with faculty and kind of being proactive in those elements. Could you give us a few tips on how did you manage to do that, and maybe a few tips for the students on how to develop those relationships, how to reach out? How did you do that?
Oh, sure. So, like I said earlier, just finding someone that you feel you can work with really well. So, I've worked with everyone in this room as well as with other professors, but I really love hearing professors talk about their research. And so when I hear that, I try and, figure out what they have been working on and see if their personality and working style will match with mine. And obviously with undergraduate research, you get to be a little less picky. And that's not to say that anyone in this room that I wasn't picky about. But, just trying to find those opportunities and then actively seeking them out and not expecting that they will just fall into your lap. Because especially at a smaller university, research may not be quite as active, or it might not be as readily available to all students. And so it's going to be something that is only there for students that really care about it, which also creates a really important and great community of undergraduate research students. And so just really taking those steps to show that you care about what you're going to do and that you are willing to learn and to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, sometimes students don't know how to do the first step. Do you reach out in person? Do you reach out over email? What do you do?
Yeah, I would say literally any of the above that you can think of. If your professor doesn't respond by email, maybe talk to them in person. If your professor doesn't talk as much in the email, maybe if they're more of an in-person type of person, maybe go up to them in person if you have the guts after class. Be like, hey, I heard you talk about this in class, and I'm curious what you did with this research. I heard you mention working with rugby players. What specifically about rugby players were you looking at? I think this is super cool. Let me know more about it. I'm interested in this. Just showing the interest and the passion that you have for something will go a long way, because then that professor, especially in a smaller school, it can be a lot easier, like Rose was saying, to have them know your name, know your face, recognize you, and see you in the hallway, say hi, say, oh, by the way, we're going to start doing this thing if you want to join us in a few minutes. And you can go, oh, okay, grab your backpack, scramble over there, and pretend like you're not late for another class for 20 minutes. Things like that. But literally start however you can. Like you were saying, it really does start with building relationships with your professors, getting to know them, getting to know what their research interests are, and seeing how that can work with what you're interested in.
Yeah, I think that's so important as faculty, because sometimes we might not have an opportunity exactly that month or that quarter that a student reached out. But if we do, in the next quarter or in a few months, the person that we will remember say, hey, I have Rachel and Rose. They reached out a while back. Those are probably the first persons that we as faculty will reach out if we remember that you guys develop any interest on research at some point, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's so important to work with somebody that you know you're going to work well with, because we all have different styles, whether it be passing back and forth papers and editing. So it's really important that you find somebody that is going to mesh with your style.
Yeah. And something that Rachel said that just stood out to me was, going up to talk to a professor after class if you have the guts to do so. And so I know that for me, it was really scary to try and talk to professors because I assumed that I was inconveniencing them or that they didn't want to listen to me or anything. But, since I've gotten involved in research, I've been assured that that's not the case most of the time. But, at the start, it can still feel really scary. And no matter how much you hear that you're not, being a bother, it still is hard to get over that first bump. And so if reaching out over email is something that you're more comfortable with, definitely start there, form that initial connection, because then you'll start to feel a bit more comfortable with the individual faculty member, and then you'll probably be able to talk to them in person a lot easier.
Rachel, how have the relationships that you've made with faculty help you progress in your career or onto the next step?
Yeah, so being involved in undergraduate research has made a significant difference in what I'm doing next, because similar to Rhodes, I originally, exactly like Rhodes, I originally came to Central because I wanted to be an RD, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I took a couple nutrition classes, and sorry, Kelly.
I tried to figure out how we lost both of you.
Hey, I didn't get to take you for any nutrition classes when I first got here.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It was not your classes that I took, so.
Well,
But I was taking nutrition classes, and I got to take Dr. Dickinson's physiology class at the same time, and that was what drew me to physiology and anatomy and those kinds of human body studies. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is my thing. I could figure out, You're good. I figured out from being on the phone with family members, friends, everything. They were like, you really like this physiology stuff, don't you? I'm like, yeah, how can you tell? And they're like, you've been ranting about what you learned in physiology for the last hour. How can you not see this? I'm like, okay, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. But side tangent aside, working in undergraduate research has, like we were talking about, built a lot of relationships with professors. And what I'm doing next, going to University of Montana to work in the work physiology and exercise metabolism lab at the University of Montana with Dr. Slivka is going to be super great. And I got that connection because Dr. Dickinson, the faculty here, went to his PhD program with Dr. Slivka, and Dr. Dickinson worked together in their PhD program, so they already knew each other, they were buddies. So when I was interested in that lab, Dr. Dickinson sent Dr. Slivka an email. Was like, hey, I have this student, Rachel. She's super cool. I think she would be a great fit in your lab. And it was pretty much sold from there. So it's very relational academia. And being able to have those connections with people, even if you don't know faculty at other schools or people at other schools that you have connections with, your professors probably do because they've been in academia a lot longer than you have. So you can kind of take advantage of those relationships that they have for your own benefit and for your future career.
And then you met Dr. Slivka at a regional American College of Sports Medicine conference, correct?
I got to meet Dr. Quindry there.
Yeah, Dr. Quindry was there, and Rachel and I were talking to him at the University of Montana booth, and I casually said something about reading Powers and Howley for fun, and he got very excited because he's an author on some of the more recent editions. And so I fangirled over him and asked for a picture. And then he was so excited that I asked for a picture that he gave Rachel and I free textbooks, which was very exciting.
I love it.
It was great.
Oh my God,
that's a great story.
We have signed exercise physiology textbooks. It's fantastic.
We sure do.
It's closed away in the closet. It's not going to get any dust. It's going to be great. Memorabilia for years to come. But that was the first year we went to ACSM Northwest. And then the second year, we saw Dr. Quindry again and was like, oh, hey, I remember talking to you last year. It's been so great. I've actually been looking at University of Montana. He was like, oh, that's so cool. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do with it? I was like, oh, I want to work with Dr. Slivka. And he was like, oh, cool. And we started talking about the lab and living in Montana and what that might lead to. And I told him that I hadn't heard back from Dr. Slivka yet about having a research assistant position. He was like, oh, okay, I'll text him right now. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's fine. So he was just texting the professor that I've only talked to once in my life and that I'm holding on a pedestal and is this amazing person. And he's just texting him right in front of me and then turns down his phone. And we keep talking about Montana and how great it would be to be able to go hiking every day and how be by the mountains. And then 5 minutes later, he turns over his phone again and shows it to me. And lo and behold, it says Dustin Slivka. Oh, yeah, tell Rachel I just sent her an email 5 minutes ago. I want to get on a call with her to offer her a position. I was like, oh, and I'm standing in front of Dr. Quindry with my knees buckling and shaking. Like, oh, that's so great. So, Montana, I'll see you in the fall.
That's awesome. I think we have the two of you that are kind of pursuing a more academic path, but I think it's worth mentioning that undergraduate research, it's not only for students that are pursuing a PhD, that are pursuing a master's degree. It could really be very valuable even if you are pursuing healthcare, sport, exercise science, career, that won't be doing any research, but you will be consuming and reading a lot of research to keep yourself updated and practicing important principles of evidence-based practice. How do you guys feel about it? What would be the advice, even if a student do not want to do any research in a professional level? What do you see the benefits of participating in research projects, even if you're not going into that route specifically?
Yeah, at the NCUR conference that we went to this month, there were a lot of students that I talked to that were saying, oh, I'm going to go to med school, I'm going to go to PT school, I'm hoping to do this or that. They didn't want to pursue a research career necessarily, but they still talked about how valuable the experience of doing undergraduate research was. And even if that's just to make connections with faculty members so that, you can continue to succeed in their classes and they can connect you to other faculty members, maybe at a med school or something like that. Because any professor is going to be actively engaged in research, whether they're, conducting it or just staying up to date with the current literature. It's still important to make those connections. And then when you do get into your career, you'll have the skill set there to understand what the papers and the current literature is talking about, beyond just the basic anatomical terms or metabolic processes or whatever it is that you're reading about. You still need to understand, how did they do the statistics? What are they going to do after this? How big is this effect, or what is the significance behind this? And so it's still just really important to get engaged with it when you have the chance, because, if you're going to med school, you're probably not going to have the time to do graduate research necessarily with all the med school classes, obviously. Yeah. So doing it while you have the chance is really important.
I would probably just reiterate a lot of the same thing when you're going into those healthcare fields. It's so important, especially nowadays with all of the false information available online. It's so easy to see things that might not necessarily be true, or to see headlines of new scientific study shows that 45% of people with toes will lose them. It's like, okay, let's actually look at the research paper, maybe click on the article. Hopefully that doesn't trigger anything. But maybe see what the actual research shows, and maybe you'll find out, it's instead of actually having a connection between toes and losing toes, it's maybe something to do with diabetes complications or something like that. And there's something else going on, or being able to critically evaluate the science that's being published, seeing like how well they collected the data, how big their sample size was, how they ran statistics, if they ran them correctly or not, things like that. It can make a huge difference, because especially if you are a healthcare professional, people's lives are in your hands and people's livelihoods are in your hands. And you don't want to be saying, there's this new scientific data that shows that you're going to lose your toes. Maybe let's hold off for a second and figure out if the science is true, so that we can correctly treat people's toes without assuming they're going to fall.
Yes.
It's a really strange metaphor, but you get the idea.
I think another important point here to add, grad school for any healthcare career could be very competitive.
Absolutely.
So PT school, med school, nursing school, if you're pursuing any of those healthcare professions that will require additional schooling, you might find yourself in a position that you are competing with 10 other students, 15 other students, sometimes 20 other students that probably also have a good GPA, have good grades. So what is setting you apart from all of that competition? You got it. Yeah, research. Research is a huge thing that will set your application apart from all of that. So I think that's also very important.
And something I'll add on to that is, especially because those programs tend to be so competitive, even if you do have the perfect GPA and the perfect resume and the perfect amount of volunteer hours and everything that could possibly be perfect, especially for like PT school, med school, all those super competitive things, if you happen to not get in, there's always graduate school that can help bolster your resume, keep you active in doing things instead of just getting a job as a PT aide for 3 years and cleaning tables and not really expanding your knowledge anymore, and allowing that additional education to keep bolstering your knowledge pool so that when you do get into that health profession or that health school, you have so much more knowledge in your head and can connect so many more dots and understand the material that you're being taught in that health school so much more effectively, and you can have better tools for studying and all those types of things. You can be more successful when you finally do get around to spending all the money to go to PT school or med school or those types of things.
So one of the things that, with our nutrition master's program is becoming really more and more competitive, with that being a requirement to get into the dietetic internship now. For example, this year we were only able to accept like 50% of our applicants. And so I think moving forward, this would be a good way to differentiate yourself or to really make yourself stand out on an application, is to get involved with some undergraduate research. And personally, I want those students coming into our program that want to do research rather than just ticking a box.
Yeah, exactly.
It shows more passion.
For sure.
this
And it'll show
subject
that you're
area.
going to be a better practitioner.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think one thing that is worth mentioning, you guys mentioned that you worked in a few different projects, and that's not necessarily the topic of research that you will have to do for the rest of your life. Even if it's not the topic that you imagine yourself doing, you might have to adjust a little bit towards what faculty is doing. But it's, I think at this stage, it's more important the skills that you are developing than just the topic. Sometimes I feel students are like, I don't want to know specifically about low energy availability in sports, and I might not want to do this for the rest of my life. But if you participate on that, the skills that you are going to earn, it will be applicable for so many other areas, even if you are pursuing an academic path or not.
Yeah, I've been in, a few different research projects, and they have spanned so many different, types of things. Like we looked at Rachel and I's presentation last year was looking at an orchestra conductor and his physiological responses to conducting. And then at NCUR, I was presenting BMI and plantar fasciopathy. And then I have my metabolic versus liver composition. And then who knows what I'll end up doing. Yeah, who knows what I'll end up doing at grad school. But I don't exactly know if any of these things will continue on into my career-based research focuses, but they're all very important for building up those skills. And you can always find, if you are pursuing academia and want to get a PhD, you can always learn those specific skills to a particular research project on the spot, but you'll never understand the research process if you don't get involved in whatever you can in undergrad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's we all kind of all five of us share a common story of getting involved in research. So I think you can't be afraid of taking that first step. Reach out to your professors, attend research events on campus, off campus, and explore what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm. Should we take a few questions from our listeners, and maybe Rachel can give us some advice on it? I think one of the first questions that we often get is, how do I find research opportunities?
Yeah, so as we were talking about before, it really comes from paying attention when, I know it can be hard, but paying attention when your professors are lecturing. A lot of the times, if they are involved in active research, they'll mention it. They're excited about it, so they'll talk about it in class. Or if they have opportunities, they'll be looking for students to help them, because there has to be someone to hold up the RPE poster while someone's running on the treadmill, or someone to clean stuff afterwards. And it's not the most glorious job, but you're involved and you're there, and it's something to put on your resume. And the longer you stick around, the more involved and more responsibility you can have in those types of settings. And it's a good time.
Sorry, Rachel. I hope you,
Oh, I'm not salty about it. I'm just saying the reality.
hope you don't have post-traumatic syndrome because of...
I love my RPE scale. It's my best friend.
Another common question might be, what if I don't have any research experience? What would you say to those students?
It's a good thing you're at a school then, because that's the whole point of being in school, is to get research experience. Like we were saying, it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to hold up an RPE poster.
But somewhere.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere, and the place to do it is an undergrad. Because even if you don't have undergraduate research, if you're looking at graduate schools and you're in your senior year of undergrad and you're like, oh, shoot, I never did this undergrad research thing. What am I supposed to do? I'll never get into a grad school. You probably will, because a lot of people don't have that kind of experience and get that kind of experience in a graduate program. So you can even be ahead of the curve if you do it in your undergrad time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Totally.
And finally, last question that I feel that is very common. How soon should students be looking for a research opportunity?
As soon as you hear of an opportunity. If you're interested in undergraduate research and you think it would be something that you would care about and that you would enjoy spending your time doing, go for it. Like, ask your professors, ask research mentors, see if your professors are publishing research or actively researching. The worst that could happen is that they say no and I'll see you in class. Like, nothing terrible is going to happen. They're there to support you. They want you to succeed.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's just important to add that as faculty, we want you to come to us as soon as possible. And sometimes that's a misconception that we are looking for more mature students. And that's often not the case, because if you come to us early, that means that you have more time to work in that project and gather more benefits and maybe be able to participate in more events and maybe do more stuff and additional tasks. As Rachel mentioned, sometimes you won't have the big tasks of a research project in your first month working in a research project, but as you stay, your responsibilities will grow, other tasks will come up. So if you go to a faculty early, that's awesome, because probably you'll have more time to develop skills in a particular project. Rachel, do you have any final advices? Maybe something that we did not cover, but you wanted to tell students?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Be cozy with your professors. They're here to support you. I know it can be hard, especially if you're new to college or those types of scenarios. Your professors they can seem scary. I promise they're not. They're here to support you. They just want the best for you. So you just have to start the conversation. A lot of times, sometimes they'll try to start it for you, even if you're lucky. But a lot of the time, you just got to bug them. And that's just the reality of it, but it's a good time. It's definitely a valuable experience.
I think
100%.
Robert can be scary sometimes.
I don't think I'm...
Depends on when you see him.
Yeah, agree 100%. If faculty, faculty want students to succeed, so opportunities won't fall into your lap. My dear students, will just have to make that happen sometimes, and that means reaching out, right?
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Rachel and Rhodes, for
Thank
participating.
you.
And I hope you can come back soon to share your next steps on your academic journey. Absolutely. If you are interested in research, don't be afraid to take the first step. Reach out to your professors, attend research events, and explore your interests.
Yeah, remember to follow us on social media. Stay up to date with future episodes and upcoming events. We'd love to hear from you, so keep sending us questions and topics you'd like us to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.